Welcome everyone to my video on 7063. So this is the third installment for this assignment. There's another video for just a general overview, a video just before this one on how to pick your business and what you might use primary and secondary research for. In this video, we'll be covering the development of your paragraph content for the first memo in this assignment. Okay. So going into our wiki page on this assignment, so this is the assignment prompt for 7063 on memos, letters, and emails, or what I like to refer to it as the local business assignment. So we are focusing on task number 2 in our list, in which you have to write a memo to your boss, Alex, talking about a local business. Okay. So first, I'm just going to kind of go over the content of each one and how I might go and find that either through primary or secondary research. And then I'll return to our Word document to kind of talk about developing that raw information into coherent paragraphs. Okay, so in our previous video, you should have selected your local business and checked to make sure that there is some research that you could find online about them. So the first thing you need to be able to talk about is the company name. And you can do this one of many ways. You can simply go to their website and whatever they list their business name to be, that's what you would use. So I've been referring to this business as Espresso Royale, but in my memo, I'll want to use their full name, so I'll say Espresso Royale Coffee. Other things that the assignment calls for me to talk about or summarize is the company ownership. So I might start by researching by just going to the About Us page on their website and Our Story. So this would be the Our Story, unless this is written specifically by the owner. Yeah, this is probably what I would refer to as a secondary source. Because it's some unknown author interpreting the information and commenting on it. So I would read this. There are other ways that I could do this. I could do a general search. I could try going to Wikipedia. I know many people frown upon this. But the thing is, with Wikipedia, you would never want to use Wikipedia as a source, but it is useful for just as a starting place. And so I don't know if there is a page about Espresso Royale in here, so I'm just going to check. But let's pretend that there is. What you would do, instead of just citing the Wikipedia page about Espresso Royale or whoever your business is, you would want to go down to their sources. And try to go to the source of their information. Don't cite Wikipedia because that's editable by anybody. Instead, you would go to the original source information that they got their information from. Another way would be to do a search for secondary sources in the news articles. So obviously I'm using Google, and not everyone may have access to that, but if you are able to use a different search, or if you're able to get access to Google through having setting up a different network, that would be great. So I'm going to look for news about Espresso Royale. And I will just probably scan these based off of title to see what's relevant, and then read the ones that look like they're relevant based off of the title. I might be able to narrow my search results to sort it by date and that sort of thing. Okay, so doing some of that research should allow me to get some of the information I need for my first part of my memo. The location should be pretty straightforward to find. Either it's on their website or you can search for it. If you aren't able to find out who owns the company and what their ownership situation is, you might need to go to primary research. You might have to call them or go there and interview somebody to answer that question. Okay, so A, B, and C are pretty straightforward. They're just kind of fact-based. So if I go over into my Word document, I know that either as my opening or in one of my body paragraphs, I'm going to need to do parts A, B, and C. So name, owner, location. Okay, so I could probably put all of that basic information into one paragraph or even one sentence. Okay. If your business has multiple locations, you can list all of them and say which particular location you're going to be focusing on. That would be useful. All right, moving on to part D, the government to which the place of business is legally subordinate or under the legal jurisdiction of. So obviously Espresso Royale is in the United States. I know it operates in Illinois, but I think it also operates in another state, so I would want to find where that is. Oh, there it is, Michigan and Wisconsin. So this is a primary source. And so I might start with just a very simple search question like, what laws affect coffee shops? And maybe you won't come up with anything, but sometimes you can. So for example, how the FDA's revised menu labeling rule may affect coffee shops. That might be relevant, but it's from 2014, so it's kind of old. Might find other things in news. So you can, in your memo, simply just say it's in the United States and must abide by the state laws for Illinois, Wisconsin, and I forget the other state, Minnesota specifically, Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin specifically. But I'm guessing that it's going to be useful to include more specific laws that will be important, such as what kind of health and safety laws will they have to abide by. So more about why I'm heading in that direction in a minute. Item E asks us to address what their primary source of revenue is. And sure, you could just say, oh, it's a coffee shop or it's a clothing shop. But let's get a little bit more specific in our primary research. So I could do this a number of ways. I could either going to their website if they have their full menu there, or just go to their shop, go to the location, and I could just look at the menu and count how many items of one category there are versus how many items in another category. And that will tell me, oh, most of what they are selling are beverages with caffeine or coffee in them. But they also, as other things that they sell, other types of goods, they also sell, sandwiches and soup, etc. And so I can number how much they sell in terms of lunch food, how much they sell in non-coffee beverages, and that sort of thing. You can also, again, so just looking at the menu yourself, that is a primary resource. So you can do this based off of your own judgment, or again, you could do an interview with one of the employees, asking them, what's your most popular items? What gets, what do people ask for the most? What causes people to want to come into the shop? I guess you could also, if you had the time, do a really broad survey and ask a whole lot of people why they go there, why they shop there, to try to come up with what is the primary source of revenue, even within coffee drinks. Okay, so that's a couple of different ways that I could cover the beverages or the products, what they're selling. Items G and H. Okay, the primary consumer demographic may be a little bit more difficult for you to find. Depending on the size of your company, if it's really big, you might be able to find this in a database of secondary sources. But probably what you'll want to do, because the point of this assignment is to get you out in the field, is to go to the shop and interview one of the workers and talk to them and ask them, who seems to be your most common customer, and ask them questions about what that customer is like and what age are they? Do you get mostly men or women? Um, and how does that affect what they like? That sort of thing. Uh, what other demographics do you get in here? So you want to describe that. You can also base this off of your own personal observation. So you could do an observation where you go at the most popular times of day and just, count the number of people who walk through the door. And then describe who they are. Are they young? Are they middle-aged? Are they older? Um, you know, and then try to break it down into numbers. Are they college kids, or are they young professionals, or are they in the labor force? That sort of thing. Um, are they really hip? So on and so forth. So lots of ways to describe the demographic. And so you would want to try to describe that in a very specific way, so that if I hadn't ever been to your local business and I saw the description of the customers, I could maybe pick out someone in a crowd who looks like they would like that business. Okay. So item H, relevance of the physical. So this is the most important part, I think, of this outline. You need to be able to address the going concern for the business in this location. And if you click on this page, it'll take you to another wiki page that explains what that means. And basically what a going concern is anything the business would be concerned about in order to keep running, stay in business, or even to thrive. So the ability of a business or company to continue operating and thriving. And so based off of everything that comes before item H, you would want to make sense of this, right? Draw a conclusion or come to a closing. So if you remember from one of our previous videos, one of the ways, or one content that you can cover in a closing is making sense of items together. And so if the question is, what would this business be most concerned about in order to stay in business or thrive, we might look at all the information that came before it and what among these items is concerning. So for example, even just looking at the location, if you remember our outline of our paragraphs, very basic information: the name, the owner, and the location. Okay. I could ask the question of what would be a going concern for each of these items. Maybe the owner is near retirement and just doesn't want to spend as much time managing the business anymore. That would be a going concern, trying to find a replacement or deciding whether or not they want to keep the business going on after them. Maybe there's a problem with the name. Hopefully not. Maybe the target demographic just doesn't like the name, or it's not very self-explanatory or something. The location, there might be lots of opportunities to talk about problems with the location. Maybe it's really hard to spot, so maybe foot traffic, you can't actually tell that the business is there, or maybe it's far away from the most popular places in the city. Maybe, it's an area where there's a lot of nightlife and they're not open that late. So there's all kinds of things that you could address this question of what's the going concern to, even to just this most basic information. So once we identify H as the purpose of our memo, then that really changes how we address this other content, even if the content at first looks very simple and straightforward. And so that's what I would like to see in your paragraphs for this memo. Don't just say plain information. This is the company name, this is the owners, this is the location. I'd like for you to use that information as evidence for a claim about what the going concern is. So, if you have listened to my previous video on creating paragraphs, this should look very familiar to you. So let's say I want to have a body paragraph about the name, owner, and location. I wouldn't just start with the business I'm focusing on is Espresso Royale and the owner is blah, 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 blah. Instead, I would begin with a premise. Remember our pecking order, right? So my premise might be, let's see, because of, because Espresso Royale is located primarily on a college campus, that geographic location means there is much less business during the summer. And that is my premise. That is my statement of belief, my premise of belief. That's my I think statement. So then my evidence would then cover the name of the business, the owner, the location, and then, draw that to a close. So make use of this information, A through G, for the point of making these arguments about what is a growing concern. And a going concern might be something that it is essential that this continue to be a positive thing. So maybe you find something in what they sell, their primary source of revenue might be a particular coffee bean that people are really loving. And so a going concern would be to make sure that we have plenty of that in stock and that we never run out. It's not a problem, it's we want to not have a problem. We want to keep this going on. A going concern, again, could also be a potential problem. We need to watch out for that. So when we cover governments that this business is subordinate to or is under the jurisdiction, then we need to look at common problems that affect our business legally. What legal problems? So for example, if you did this on a bar, underage citations might be a problem. If we did a restaurant, health code violations might be a problem. And so in here, you wouldn't just say Espresso Royale is under the jurisdiction of the Illinois state government as well as the U.S. government. You would say these are the primary laws that affect this kind of business, and this is what would be a going concern for them. Okay, so each of these items you would try to connect to the purpose of our document, which is a going concern. And that is exactly what a conclusion does. So if you've ever looked at a body paragraph or a essay structure, and you're supposed to have your individual points and then have a conclusion is not just, or a closing or conclusion is not just repeating what you just said. It is connecting the overall purpose to each individual point. So in the last sentence of each body paragraph, you have a concluding thought. So remember from our paragraph video, we have a premise, which is an I think statement, evidence that supports it, and then you draw that to a conclusion answering the question, so what? And the so what is the overall purpose of this memo, which is to identify the going concern. So if my body paragraph is about the location, I would want to close that paragraph and make the very last sentence of this paragraph about the location be, what is the going concern about the location? If my next body paragraph is about their main source of revenue, my last sentence of that paragraph would be, what are the main going concerns about the products they're selling? And what that does is it ties each of your body paragraphs to a central idea. And that central idea is no longer just the local business. It is now the going concern of Espresso Royale, or whatever your business is. So now my reader knows that this is a very specific business, and the reason why it matters is that it's about what may threaten whether this business thrives in the future or not. Okay, so that's what I'd like to see in this memo. You can totally start drafting by just listing this information and writing the information as fact-based sentences, but then go back and frame each of that information with the question of how does this relate to the going concern for this business? And that will make this information so much more relevant, so much more interesting. And if you can tie this information all to that one theme, it will seem like this is actually one document and not a whole bunch of different facts just strung together for no reason. Okay, so I hope that this video was helpful. If you liked it, I hope you'll check out my next video on the second document that you will have to create for assignment 7063. And if you have any questions, please feel free to bring those to our virtual classroom or send me an email. Good luck.